Hello, Linda Franklin, and welcome to the Art Salon in Bath. How are you today?
I'm very well. Hi, Jenny. How are you?
Very good, thank you. You're in your studio, aren't you? I can tell by the state of that table next to you that you're in your studio.
Really? It just shows I've been working hard, because this is a place where things are always happening.
So tell me, how important is the studio to you? Is it somewhere that you're in there every day? Does anyone else allowed in there? What's the studio for you?
Well, the studio is my very private space, and it's a serious place where work happens, but it's also a fun place where people come in and out, the children come in and out, the grandchildren come in and out, the puppy comes in, and they all lend their energy to what is quite a sterile sort of white wall area. So after they're gone, it's just full of such a great vibe, and I love that. I feed off that.
And I mean, your paintings, they range from high, actually exactly what you've just said, that high energy, to quite reflective ones. I mean, they're always all about the colour and the expression and rhythm. But tell me, take me back. Your colour is your central part to your painting, and it always has been, even when you've used different mediums. But so tell me, where does the love of colour come from for you?
Well, I think when you're children, you absorb your surroundings, and it all goes in there, even though you're not processing it yet. And my parents were in the Middle East. I boarded at school, so I was exposed to the souks and these beautiful blue seas, and all that sort of razzmatazz that was going on. It just left its mark. And then we had a beautiful garden, which was full of azaleas, rhododendrons, and hydrangeas, and water. So that's always influenced me, and it's something I always go back to. It's just inherent. It's in my DNA now, and so it comes out.
And of course, the light in the Middle East, for instance, or closer in the Mediterranean area, is extraordinary, isn't it? And it does develop colours in a different way that I think you can see in many of your paintings.
Yeah, blue is a colour that has always been very calming and pure to me. So it's a colour that I use a lot. And I'm sure that's because of my childhood, holidays in the Mediterranean, and that Mediterranean blue cannot be surpassed. It is the true blue. So I often, I cannot get away from it. It's just, I think it's a colour that makes people feel happy in holidays and content.
And your paintings, they give joy, they uplift, even if they're highly energetic or they are more reflective. They give hope, and they are something to disappear into at the end of the day. If they're on your wall, they're that sort of focal point that you allow your viewer to put themselves into your painting. You don't just give a finished flat piece, do you? And so what I want you to do is just take me back to, I know you had some formal training, and you have explored all sorts of different mediums over the years, but this is where you've come to, and these have been sell-out collections time and time again. And how do you nail that? Take me back to when let's just go back to your formal training, which I know you came to as a mature student, but take me back to that point and bring me up to date.
Well, I love being a student. I think that it's the most marvellous place to just try out everything and anything and totally indulge yourself and experiment. It's so important. And then you have to decide where you're going, what you've learnt, and how you're going to grow. And, university, I did all that stuff. I did all the angst and rebel stuff. Fantastic. And it exposed me to all sorts of things that I wouldn't have bothered to learn about before. And I worked on paper for many years, and paper is a very unforgiving surface. You have to really know what you're doing. You don't get a second crack at it. And I think if I hadn't done 2 or 3 years working on paper, I would never be able to work on canvas in the way I do. It's given me a confidence and the sort of thing you search for, which is that sort of virtuoso, devil may care, go for it, because you have to go for it on paper. You don't get a second chance. And so being able to translate that onto canvas has helped me enormously. I'd always say to people, start on paper.
Yes.
You know, and if you can get it half right on paper, go onto canvas, because you know you've got something in the tank there to lean on. And
I know from previous conversations that poetry has been influential. I mean, as many artists have been influential, and poetry's been influential. And of course, you don't mimic any artist or writer. You've obviously absorbed it over the years. But tell me, how does literature inform your process or your inspiration?
But I think I'm a very verbal person, and in another life I would have loved to have been a poet. But so I try to sort of bring a bit of poetry into my paintings, and I always go back to two poets in particular. One is Gerard Manley Hopkins. He has this wonderful abstract way of making his poetry, and he says such beautiful things like, you know, where kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame. And that actually was the inspiration for the painting you've got, the third one along, which, yeah, you know, kingfishers catch fire. And we had a pond in our last house where very occasionally, if you were really lucky, a kingfisher would visit. And that leaves its mark. And I try to, a bit of reportage, I try to report that in my painting. It's in the back of my mind and influencing my mark making and things. So, yeah, and then, you know, Tennyson with his wonderful, lyrical, beautifully soft, romantic poems, Ennone and the Lotus Eaters, and these strange, mystical lands where, you know, people are, you know, half awake and half asleep, and everything is beautiful. You know, it's total escapism and fantasy, with a little reference to reality, so people can connect.
Well, take me, I mean, talking about that connection and how do you deliver magic onto a canvas? I mean, that's
well, Jenny, yes. I wish there was a formula. You know, there isn't a formula. There is just, you have to have this sense, that feeling of atmosphere that you want to convey. And then you just have to put it all, the way I work, I have to put it all on there, everything I'm feeling and thinking, and then take away. And that's the analytical thing. Then you have to really be logical and cold and calculating and say, I have to remove that, I can't have that. However much I love that little bit, I can't have it because it's not working with the whole. And that's when you have to be really brave, because you think, can I ever get that again? And you have to know, yes, you did it before and you did it before, you can do it again. And even if you can't, something else will happen. You know, you have to be always optimistic. Because, yeah.
Must be quite challenging to find the structure and composition when you are, I mean, because you're building in layers and then reducing some of those layers and keeping some of those layers forward. So this must drive you slightly crazy, Linda. Do you have to go away? Do you come back? Or, I mean, does that break the dialogue? How do you get through that?
Well, I think composition is the bedrock of everything. You know, if you haven't got a good composition, you might as well go away and give up. You know, composition has to be absolute. And if you've got a really solid composition, I feel, right, I'm blocked in, I'm away, I'm off the starting gates. That is going to be my grid. That's what I'm on. It might change, but it gives you an enormous sense of confidence that I've got something now and I'm going to build around it and create something. So that is hugely important. And then colour then comes, you know. As far as working on the canvas, I can be off hoovering in the house and suddenly think, I know exactly what I want to do, and I'll rush into the studio and do it there and then. I have to do it then, because otherwise the moment's gone. So it is very instinctive and it is very reactive. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to produce something which gives pleasure. It's got to have charm, it's got to be sensitive, it's got to have a bit of mood, and it's got to have a little sprinkling of magic, and it's got to take people away and be a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of escapism that everyone can connect with and enjoy. That's what I try and do anyway.
And you achieve it. You achieve it. I mean, they have the elements of the fantastical, but they're very much rooted in our landscapes, in our what we observe around us. And I think that is what connects with people. And certainly, probably as a mature student, you were able to emotionally resonate at a much deeper level, and able to portray that through colour. So I mean,
I think that.
Sorry, Linda, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying that that's absolutely right, and there are places I've been that I come back to the studio, and the memory of that walk, I just have to get the memory of how it felt on the canvas, not the actual imagery, but how it felt. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to describe. It's like a sort of internal realism that I have. I can understand it inside. I want to express it in colour.
Almost like a dream, almost for us. It's almost like a dreamscape in a way, but not.
Yeah.
Something that's very much what familiar to us, I suppose, because it could be many people.
It's an essence of something.
It is the essence of it. I know when I've shown works of yours in Hong Kong, for instance, and there's this very dramatic mountainscapes and quite sort of misty mountainscapes, and they see something different to when I'm showing them in London, and they go cross-cultural very easily. And I mean, you've been shown now in New York, Singapore, London, Hong Kong. They've been all around the world and collected all around the world. So you must tap into that fundamental response.
Well, I think there are mountains and there are seas everywhere. You know, it doesn't matter where you live. We've all been to places with lots of mountains or lots of seas or lots of buildings or whatever it is. And so providing it's non-specific, you know, you're just creating the drama of land and sea and mountains. And that can be anywhere in the world. Providing it's giving calm and happiness and escapism. I suppose that's what I'm trying to do, give people somewhere to go after the end of a really busy day, or if they've had a lovely day and they just want to continue being happy by looking at something that keeps that mood continuing, you know? And so upbeat, but hopefully it's quite strong.
And keep that fairy tale alive, really, isn't it? It's a sort of childish eyes that look out and see colour for the first time and see extraordinary landscapes. So,
well, I think that's where mood comes in, though, because they also have to have a little bit of gravitas. Mm-hmm. You know, the secret, I think, and the thing I try very hard to achieve is that if you are doing something which is attractive and aesthetically pleasing, it also has to have a bit of history and it has to have an underbelly to it. It can't just be surface, which is why I think it helps that they have so many layers and so many, you know, if you look carefully at my paintings, you will see, oh, I can see the residue of what went before, and, you know, and then how it ended up. You know, there is history on the canvas, plenty of it. If it was just one surface of these colours, it wouldn't hold its own.
No.
You know, it wouldn't.
I mean, on a very practical note, from your dealer, that makes it very difficult to photograph because the experience in front of them is very different, and then people will see.
Because they're quite sculptural.
They are very, and there's you going when you look through your paintings, you're going in and out all the time. There's this sort of rhythm and flow which cannot be picked up, you know, as people will see in the catalogue. That you don't get the same. It is very different.
Yeah. And also, if you have light on them, I don't use sparkle, but if you put light on them, because there are so many ridges, and that I use so many tools that create bumps and ridges and everything else, when somebody actually lights them properly, they do jump. And I'm always slightly, you know, sad if I think somebody's not going to light it well, because they're going to be shortchanged, you know.
But they look different in the sunlight to the you know, domestic lighting within an interior. I mean, they do look good in both, and they do change with the room and with the, you know, with the day, as it were. Tell me, what artists have informed you over the years, as in painting artists, doctors?
Well, there are a few, because I don't think that you can just choose one artist. It's like friends, you know, you choose different friends for different times when you need some help. And so obviously Monet for water. I mean, you can't go anywhere else but Monet for water. Patrick Heron for colour, you know, and also I love the way Patrick Heron's art developed. He, you know, started off doing linear stuff, and then he went on to painting his garden. So I'm very in tune with that. And then there's Frank Bowling, who's very, he's alive today, doing so much texture and using so many different glazes and things. I mean, I love looking at his work. And then you've got the master, you've got Richter, who I go to, you know. I mean, you know, I only have these little paddles. He's there with that great big piece and creating so many different textures and runs of colour, and it's just phenomenal. And then, of course, Jackson Pollock. I did my dissertation on one of his paintings, and I always go back to Jackson when I'm thinking that, oh dear, you know, will I ever get it right? Because he was so brave and so courageous. And he, you know, the famous quote he always said is it a painting? You know, he was never sure. And I always think, is this painting good enough? Is it finished? Is it ready? You know, in my mind, they're never finished.
I know. That's been the nightmare over the years, Linda Franklin. In the 200 years that we've worked together, you're a perfectionist, aren't you? You drive yourself very hard, you work yourself very hard, and you question your dialogue with the painting all the time. I mean, intellectually and emotionally, that's...
Well, I think unless I have struggled with the painting, unless I have really got to know it, I can't let it go. I feel I have to have developed, you know, those chapters in a painting. You know, it's not a finished painting. A book isn't a finished book until it has a few chapters. Mm-hmm. So I sort of feel, you're not ready to go yet. We're only on chapter 2, you know. We have to come to at least chapter 8 or 9 before you're allowed to leave the studio, you know. So I have a very sort of personal relationship with my paintings. You know, they become something that sometimes gives me something and sometimes takes it away. You know, I recently said they're just like this little puppy we've got, you know, they need to be controlled, but they give and they take, and then we sometimes reach a dialogue where we're both happy. You know, it's a very personal exchange. The canvas is a living thing to me, really. We're both in this together, you know, it's very much like that. And I could never just do a painting that took me 15 minutes or an afternoon. I just would feel, no, it won't have the depth. You know, wouldn't have had the excitement.
No, and that, I mean, that is why, you know, I mean, this collection was due to be in New York and in London, actually. And, you know, it takes you about a year to put together a collection like this. This is a long process, isn't it? It's not.
It is.
Not quick by any means.
It's not quick.
And you question yourself. But Linda, it's been a delight, as always. Thank you very much. There's a million more questions, but we're going to have to save them. I can see that you're probably itching to get back to your canvases rather than chatting to me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Not at all. Take care until next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.